we need to move our focus to a king. King Acresus of Argos. And King Acresus of Argos, he was a good king. He was a righteous king and a just king. He had a wife whom he loved. But King Acresus of Argos and his wife, well, they really wanted one thing. Can anyone guess what that thing might be? You can put it in chat. You can shout it out. Fleur's doing it. What do you think it might be? Anybody? King Acresus of Argos and his wife, they wanted a baby. A baby, of course they did. I mean, he already had a baby. He had a girl, but girls are rubbish. He wanted a baby boy so that he could have a male heir to inherit his throne. We're going to get there, but the moral of this story is don't be a jerk about gender. But he didn't want to give his kingdom to a girl. If she sat on the throne, she might paint it pink and cover it with glitter, and girls are gross. No, he wanted a boy. And when his wife wasn't providing for him, and he really wanted a boy, well, he did what all men do whose wives aren't quite holding up their end of the bargain. You know, he went to the oracle at Delphi. And he came to the oracle and he said, I pray you, tell me how I can get a son. Well, when he heard what she had to say, he wanted his money back, because the oracle turned and she said, you will never have a son. Moreover, you will be slain by your grandson. And he went, well, that sucks. That's a terrible prophecy. Okay, slain by my grandson. And he returned home to Argos. Well, I only have one child, my daughter Danae. So I will take her and I will lock her in the tallest room of the highest tower, and I will make it so that she never sees a man and never has any children. And that way I will defeat the prophecy. Well, he took his daughter Danae, and she was happy to be locked away because she didn't want to give birth to someone who would kill her dad. She loved her dad. Her dad was a reasonable person, even though he had very antiquated ideas about gender norms. And so she willingly confined herself away in the tallest room of the tallest tower. And she stayed there for days. And the days turned to weeks. And the weeks turned to months. And she grew bored. The servants brought her meals every day. They slid them under a hatch in the door. She tried to make conversation, but the king knew that any chance of a baby would mean his end. And so the servants had had their ears cut off, so they could not hear what she had to say. Well, there's a god who decided to intervene here. And this god is Poseidon. Poseidon had seen Danae, had seen how lovely she was, had seen how lonely she was, and he'd gone to his buddy Zeus. And he'd said, Brother Zeus, come here. You look like you need a night off. Hera's wearing you out. No, she isn't, said Zeus. Well, we can fix that. There's a lovely little thing. Her name's Danae. She's kept in the tallest room of the tallest tower of the castle at Argos. Have you seen her? Let me show you. Isn't she lovely? Imagine how lovelier she'd look with you on top of her, if you know what I mean. Subtlety. Wink. And Zeus, because he was just as gross as his brother, said, that does sound like a good way to spend an evening. All right, I'll be back in a minute. See you later, Poseidon. And Zeus, off he went. And he came and he knocked at the door. And Danae said, who is it? It's Zeus, said Zeus. Zeus, I can't open the door. I literally can't. It's locked. My father has locked it. And Zeus said, I am a god, my dear. We have our ways. And he turned himself into a shower of golden rain. And that golden rain fell through the roof, and it landed into Danae's lap, and Zeus reformed in front of her. And I can't tell you exactly what happened inside that room. Only that both participants were very willing. And 9 months later, Danae gave birth to a lovely baby boy, bubbling and bouncy with a great bushy curl of hair. And his name was Perseus. Well, when King Acresus heard about this, he heard that he finally had a grandson who might be able to fulfill the prophecy. He was not best pleased. And he decided, when he heard that the grandson was the son of Zeus, that there was only one prudent way to deal with this. So he got a great big wooden box, big enough to fit both Danae and the baby Perseus. And he got them to sit in the box. And he had the box carried down to the sea. And he pushed it out to sea and watched as the waves carried the box away. And he went, "Not my problem anymore. Bye-bye, bye-bye, yes, bye-bye." And Danae wept and Perseus wept because he was a baby and the waves took them away. And he said, and he turned to his horrified wife and he said, "Look, I can't be held to blame for killing them. If the gods want them alive, they'll keep them alive. If they want them to die at sea, maybe it was their destiny. Either way, who's up for bridge?" And off he went. Well, Danae and Perseus were picked up and carried gently by the waters of Poseidon. And they were carried all the way to the island of Seriphos. There we go. Seriphos, let's get that right. All the way to the Isle of Seriphos. Now, it's not every day that a big wooden crate gets caught in your fishing nets. And it's even less every day when that big wooden crate contains a baby and a beautiful young woman. But this was the day that happened to Dictys, the fisherman. Now, Dictys, the fisherman, man, he was lovely. He'd lost most of his teeth. And he had a keen mind, but he decided to devote it to puns and fishing. So he didn't have a great many friends. But he went out and he worked hard with his gummy smile. And when he reeled in his catch and he had caught a princess and the son of Zeus, he went, "Oh, crikey, that's unusual, isn't it? Goodness me, hello, I'm Dictys. What's your name, my love? You must be freezing. And you come, I've got a coat here. Oh, I haven't got more. You can have mine." And he wrapped his coat around Danae. And he found some food for the screaming Perseus, and he brought them back to his house. Now, this is a very reasonable and human thing to do, but as we've seen, not many of the characters in this story have turned out to be reasonable and human, and Danae was overwhelmed by this show of generosity. "Oh, no, please, I won't think of taking payment. You must stay here in my house, you poor thing. I'll look after you, and you can have a separate bed or anything. Absolutely, that's fine, and we'll look after the boy. What's his name?" "Perseus," said Danae. "And I shall raise him as my own," said Dictys. And raise him as his own he did. Although, as the years passed, it became increasingly obvious that Perseus and Dictys were cut from slightly different cloths. Dictys was a hunched old toothless fisherman. Perseus was this terrifying inverted triangle svelte demigod. At the age of 14, he could bench press his father's house. And he had muscles everywhere. He had muscles on his muscles. He had muscles, if I'm honest, where his brain ought to be. "I am Perseus." And Perseus, "Yeah, that's right, my boy, I know. I am Perseus, Dad." Yeah, that's right. "How are you doing at school?" "Not well." And so Perseus grew up to become handsome and lovely and really rather strong. I mean, Charles Atlas, eat your heart out. This guy was the poster child for male bodybuilders. And the king of Seriphos was a man named Polydectes. And Polydectes was a shrewd man because he understood that the best way to get money from the citizens was to tax them. And so he decided the best way to tax people was to hold a great big party. And he held parties every year. It was called a tax party. And all the nobles would come and they would bring their finery and they would eat the king's food and they would drink the king's wine and then they would give the king gifts. Voluntary gifts, of course. "Here, my lord, here is a bracelet taken from an ancient tomb, and I give it to you in the hopes that you don't send me to jail." And so the lords would bestow gifts upon the king, and the peasants would bestow gifts upon their lords, and this way the system of governance worked on the Isle of Seriphos. But the king had a brother, and the brother was a gummy-toothed old fisherman named Dictys. And the king had learned that in his brother's house there was a beautiful young woman, and her name was Danae. And he'd stopped by several times before the tax party, hoping to get a word with Danae. Unfortunately, she never seemed to be left alone by this terrifyingly giant brute of a son. "Hi, Mr. King, I'm Perseus. I don't think it's right that you come and have private chats with my mum. I'm going to chaperone if that's all right." And since the king could barely fit in the same room as Danae and all the muscles of Perseus, he said, I have to scheme. I will find a way to separate Perseus from his mother. And so this tax party, he invited the citizens. He decided he'd break with tradition. And so, as all of his lords lined up and gave him great gifts of meat, or huge chains of gold, or many heads of cattle, or whole herds of horses, he took them and said, "Yes, thank you very much. Yes, safe from jail for another year. Yes, off you go. Yes, very nice." And now I think it is time for the peasants' gifts. And the peasants went, "Oh, again, well, we never give gifts. Oh, shit." He said, "And we'll start with, we're picking at random, Perseus, that guy right there. What gift have you brought for me?" And Perseus stepped up. He said, "I haven't got a gift, your highness, your majesty, my lord, sir. But, oh dear, am I in trouble?" "Oh yes, a very great deal of trouble, my dear Perseus. This is bad news." "Oh, well, I'll do anything. I'll do anything at all. Send me out to get anything and I will go and get it." "Anything," said Polydectes. "All right. I would like the head of the Gorgon Medusa. Bring it to me, and that will be a satisfactory gift." And everybody shuddered and went, "The Gorgon Medusa, the terrifying creature who turns people to stone, the woman with snakes for hair." And Perseus went, "All right, I'll see you later." And he turned and started to walk out of the throne room. Well, Polydectes carried on with the party. His mother, Danae, was sidled up to by a somewhat drunken king. "Danae, lovely to finally get some alone time with you. Tell me more about those lovely breasts of yours." And she went, "Oh, God. But Perseus, he was off and he was away. And he looked really hard for the Gorgon Medusa. But she wasn't in the phone book. And so he tried knocking on lots of different doors. "Hello, does the Gorgon Medusa live here?" But she didn't live there. "Hello, have you seen the Gorgon?" "No." "Oh, I've looked all over town. Where could she be?" Just then, a man appeared in a great plume of cresting wave. And he said, "Hello there, little Poseidon. I hear you've been given a quest to go and slay a Gorgon known as Medusa. Well, I'd be happy to lend you my assistance." "That'd be nice. Who are you?" said Perseus.
You need not know my name. You can call me Mr. Sidon. Poseidon."
And Perseus, not the brightest tool in the shed, said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Sidon. Do you know where Medusa lives?"
He said, "I'd love to be able to tell you. Unfortunately, I don't. I'd have killed her myself if I did. No. But the Grey Eye will know. You've heard of the Grey Eye?"
"No."
Really, you've not heard of the three old women, one eye between them. They know everything. Ancient no bells. All right, fine. The Grey Eye live on Mount Atlas. You must seek them, and they will tell you where to go."
"All right, thanks."
"Wait, where are you going? You're going to go and find Medusa with no weapons, no arms, no armor?"
"Oh, weapons? Why didn't I think of that? That would have been a good idea."
"You need weapons that can slay those blessed with powers by the gods. Not that I'm telling you where you could go, but the Garden of the Hesperides is the armament of the gods."
"I don't understand those words."
The Garden of the Hesperides. You need me to write this down for you? Fine. Hang on. Garden of the Hesperides. Go find the Grey Eye. Get them to tell you where Medusa is, and come and meet me outside the Garden of the Hesperides."
"Oh, thank you, Mr. Sidon." And so off Perseus went to try and find the Grey Eye on the foothills of Mount Atlas.